Our first speaker, Colin Cook, is Head of Digital Strategy and Programmes for the Scottish Government, and Colin's going to be telling us the progress that they've been making and how we can get involved. So, ladies and gentlemen, Colin Cook.
I don't think I've ever had a round of applause before I've started. In fact, I very rarely get one after I've finished as well. So I hope, thank you for that introduction. I've been, those of you who know me, I've just had a little boy, a little baby at my rather late time of life. So I couldn't make the dinner last night. But as I said, I was up all night dealing with someone who was crying because they wanted to drink, and I thought that probably would be the same as you. But I was talking this the other day, and I said, because I heard Mark talking about people tweeting during the meetings, during these sort of conferences. It's very off-putting because sometimes they put them up behind you, the sort of comments that you're getting as you go along, and that can be really disconcerting. But I was talking a couple of weeks back at one of these conferences, and I was explaining that I've been up all night dealing with a little baby who'd had a bit of a problem with his tummy, let us say. And someone tweeted, generally tell me, someone put, Colin Cook said he'd been up all night dealing with shit. Hashtag sounds like my job description. So I hope that I can add something today about the digital strategy in Scotland. The title of this talk is about infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion. Now, I may be talking 24 hours or just under 24 hours after the Minister. But what I want to try and do is pick up on some of the themes that he described yesterday and explain why I believe, and we believe in the Scottish Government, that Scotland has the potential to become a world-class digital nation. And I'm going to try and talk about some of the steps we're taking and some of the progress that we're making. And hopefully I'll leave you with an understanding or an idea about how you might be involved, because we're not going to realize this vision unless everybody in this room, particularly in the ICT industry, is involved. There's a logo up there, the Digital Scotland logo. And the challenge for the government and for the strategy and for this industry as a whole is to make Digital Scotland more than just a logo. Because that shouldn't be a logo, it should be a view about the kind of country that we want to be, a country that has efficient digital public services, a country, and Polly will talk about this, in which its ICT industry is at the cutting edge of international trade and commerce. A society that is digitally included and that we don't just reinforce the divisions that mar other parts of our society. Now, I'm going to start by talking about the first of those three I's, which is infrastructure. And I'm doing that not because it's the most important of the three, but because I think it's the foundation upon which some of our wider ambitions can be built. In February this year, in fact March this year, we signed a contract for the provision of next-generation broadband across the Highlands and Islands. An investment of £146 million in total, if you take the private sector contribution, in one of the most complex civil engineering programs, certainly the telecommunications sector has ever seen in Scotland. And we're talking about 400 kilometres of subsea cable, 19 crossings to islands, 800 kilometres of fibre across some of the most challenging landscapes in Europe, let alone in Scotland. And it'll provide a new, and I hope resilient, backhaul network that will provide the future platform for economic development across that region. In a few weeks' time, and we're considering the tender submission at the moment, we're going to sign the second piece of that infrastructure jigsaw, and that's a contract that will cover the rest of Scotland. A larger contract, it's probably over 150, 160 million pounds, negotiated on behalf, and I think this is critical, on behalf of the Scottish Government, but also local authorities across the region. And we've acted together in partnership, and 14 of those local authorities have put additional financial contributions into the mix, and they recognize, and they've been fantastic in working with us and recognizing that a single deal for an area of that size is in the interests of the country. We've also launched just a few things that are up there that explain the variety of things we're doing on infrastructure. We've launched and committed £5 million to an initiative called Community Broadband Scotland. And this is a national initiative run out of Highlands and Islands Enterprise, which gives support to communities through a team of professional support officers and online tools to help them deliver and develop the solutions, the connectivity solutions that meet their needs. This is particularly for areas out with the footprint of next-generation broadband. And it'll allow them to take their own action to meet needs and priorities. And we also have this program called the Demonstrating Digital Program in the government. And that's about making it clear outside of Scotland that we're a country that encourages innovation, wants to see companies invest in ICT, wants to see people testing and trialing new technologies, about showcasing the art of the possible. And that'll include work with some of our island communities to improve the broadband service that they receive. It includes working with social housing providers like the Glasgow Housing Association to bring affordable connections and services to the digitally excluded. And it involves partnering with industry, and I know many of you here today, to deliver a series of exhibitions and demonstration projects on things like point-to-point microwave links and free space optics. It's all about creating the digital buzz in Scotland and being recognized as a country where this is something that the government and the people who work here take as something that's important to its future. And we also started, and I think we've got more work to do here, but we've also started to address the infrastructure demands of mobile and Wi-Fi. I think there was an announcement recently about the government's commitment to ensure that there's wireless internet access across the rail network by 2019. And the government announced free Wi-Fi access at 25 of our busiest stations only a few weeks ago. I hope that that gives you a sense of the kind of progress that we're making on infrastructure. But however encouraging that is, and however transformational the result of that investment in communities, it's pretty clear that it's only the start of a journey. We're committed to what's described as becoming a world-class connected country by 2020. And that, we recognize, is far more than a fixed infrastructure. It's a hybrid of fixed and mobile networks that will support any device, anywhere, anytime across our country. It'll see, yes, the widespread deployment of fiber backhaul through the initial projects, but it'll take that fiber into homes in urban and semi-urban areas. And it'll also see ubiquitous mobile coverage, be that LTE, LTE Advanced, something I don't even know because it hasn't been invented yet. We want to see that kind of coverage to at least 98% of our landmass and 100% of our population. A world-class country, however, is about far more than connectivity. It's a country, as I said, where people choose to engage digitally. Not because government tells them that they need to, or indeed forces them to do so, but because they're capable and confident of using that technology, and they want to use that technology, and government services are designed in a way that makes that come true. It's also a country in which businesses have the skills and confidence to exploit those technologies, where we're seen as an attractive place for inward investment, and where the support is in place from all the agencies that we have working in this field to encourage digital innovation and support the creation of growth and the digital transformation of businesses. And as I keep saying, and I'll come back to this, it's a Scotland, and I know Mr. Swinney talked about it, it's a Scotland where public services that are delivered and accessed online, where the Internet of Things stimulates innovation and drives efficiency in education, healthcare, transport, where we use machine-to-machine technologies to help our cities manage urban congestion or maximize energy efficiency. And we build upon the great opportunity that Glasgow has with its investment of £24 million to demonstrate what a smart city of the future might look like. The second of my eyes, if I can call them that, is innovation. And this was very much the theme of what Mr. Swinney was talking about yesterday. And I think he talked about his determination to see an innovative approach to the delivery of public services, to opening up data, to use data and the opportunities that it has to drive public sector reform. Now, the innovation strategy within the digital world, I think, means a number of things. And Polly's going to talk about, I know, the ICT industry. And let me be absolutely clear. A vibrant and successful ICT and digital industry is critical to the achievement of this vision. It's gone a little bit unnoticed, but about a month ago, the government published its economic prospectus for an independent Scotland. And it identified the ICT and digital industry as one of the key success stories and key sectors of the future for Scotland. And that's alongside things that you'd expect to be in there: tourism, oil and gas, renewables. And I think it's a tribute to Polly and her colleagues that we've managed to get the industry recognized at the top table of economic sectors in Scotland. We've got more to do. We've got to see a comprehensive skills development plan, and that's something I think Polly might reference, because we need to drive that forward, and Skills Development Scotland are taking it forward. because we've got to make sure that the way in which ICT is taught in our schools and our colleges meets the demands of that sector. But to have it recognized at the top of that table, I think is a huge step forward and something that we need to build on. But the ICT and digital sector is only one side of the equation. Yes, it's critical to our economic future, but I think the real challenges of the digital economy, when we talk about having a vibrant digital economy, lies across Scotland's wider business base. It lies with companies that probably don't even consider themselves to be digital and are going to have to think about that and redefine the kind of markets they're in. Before I came to this post, I spent 3 years at the Army, not as a soldier, as you can probably tell by my age and the way I carry myself, but running their recruitment. And that gave me, apart from giving me a huge appreciation for everything that the Army does, it also gave me an insight into how an industry can change quickly in the digital world. Because recruitment 4 or 5 years ago was based upon putting adverts on, in our case, television or in newspapers, and waiting for people to come to you. And over the course of 3 to 4 years, that's totally changed. It's now almost exclusively digital. It's about creating communities of people who might work for you in the future and nurturing them. It's about using social media to let them see inside your company and talk to the people who are working in it and not just relying on glossy brochures or the way in which you want to portray yourself. And if that can happen to the recruitment industry, I think it's important, and government and our economic agencies need to take a lead in ensuring that every business sector understands that it might happen to them, to recognize that digital does rewrite the rules and does demand organizations to reimagine what they're doing and the business models that they're operating on, to embrace digital technology as a new way, or the way potentially, of engaging with their customers, suppliers, and stakeholders. And where everybody, and this applies as much to government, and I hope, and finally I will talk about the digital dialogue, it applies as much to government as it applies to any other organization, to recognize that in this world there's no monopoly on wisdom, and that ideas and challenges and threats and opportunities can come from anywhere. That means a few things. I think 3 things I just want to quickly touch about how we want to drive innovation through the digital strategy in Scotland. The first is to give that kind of advice, that kind of high-quality advice to businesses in every sector. As part of our recent policy development process, all our enterprise and skills agencies across Scotland, Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Business Gateway, and others, came together with us to try and produce a series of proposals about what more we could do to support businesses, to stimulate and benefit from the opportunities of digital technology. I'd recommend you have a look at that report. It is a draft report. It is a series of recommendations. But it talks about a number of things, and it talks about how those agencies need to work together in future. They've got to recognize that the old ways of working, where you could identify what the important growth companies were by the trappings of success, the size of the office, the number of people who work there, the size of their turnover initially, might not work in the digital age. And therefore, we need to work together to identify the stars of the future and to cultivate them. We made £7 million available to support their recommendations. I'm sure it'll give me a good start, and I'm sure it's something that we'll need to invest more in. If we've got 340,000 businesses in Scotland, all of whom will need to or are responding to the challenges of the digital age. But I think it just shows the willingness that we have to use the links that we have out there to try and support our business base to develop. The second aspect of innovation is the way in which we deliver public services. And again, I try and pick up a little bit on what John Swinney said yesterday. Through a commitment to open data and to driving that commitment throughout Scotland and throughout the public sector in Scotland, and to have the confidence for the public sector to open itself up and say, yes, we are going to invite new partners into the development and delivery of public services and the way in which applications are developed. And that's going to be a huge leap and a huge challenge to many of us, but it is something that we're committed to do. Similarly, when it comes to our own in-house development, we're committed to developing public services in an agile way and sweeping away some of the ways in which we've operated in the past to reflect the realities of the digital world. And then finally, and I think it's an important spur to innovation, we're going to look again at the way in which we procure goods and services in the digital world. Now, I know that the digital procurement team won an award last night, so I think we're building on success rather than transforming something that isn't working. But we know we have to develop agile procurement methodologies in the digital world, and we will be doing that. We know we have to have the confidence to frame problems and request solutions when we're not necessarily able to specify the precise nature of the answer. And we believe that by doing that, by developing an understanding of the marketplace, by operating procurement in an intelligent way that understands how the digital world is developing in Scotland, we can provide new opportunities for small businesses and emerging talent in our country and provide them with the spur to go out beyond Scotland, having worked with the public sector, having worked on attractive contracts, and take that expertise to the world. My final eye, so to speak, is inclusion. The Deputy First Minister said the other day that a nation that invests in its infrastructure without making an investment in growing digital participation and encouraging digital skills risks limiting the ambition of that country, risks creating a future where the opportunities of the digital age only go to the few. And that kind of scenario, and I think we do see it in some areas of the world, where there has been incredible investment in innovation and it only goes to a few, is bad for the economy and it's bad for society and it's bad for our standing in the digital world. And if we do have that ambition to be a world-class digital country, we want it founded on the fact that it's a country that where everybody is digitally enabled. And that's why, for a year now, we've been working with some of Scotland's leading companies in an initiative called the Digital Participation Charter. This was something that came out of originally from the Microsoft GovCamp process, and I know a number of people who are represented here today, like Sopra and others, have been part of that. But we've worked with them over the last few months, and we've decided to change this around a bit, to reinvigorate the Digital Participation Charter, to ensure that it's adequately resourced, to provide the leadership it needs, so that it can fulfill its potential as a vehicle for partnership to really develop digital inclusion in this country. And we're committed to providing the resources, we're committed to providing the leadership and management, and we're also committed to providing a degree of financial support to sponsor projects that will tackle digital inclusion amongst some of our hardest to reach groups. But we want to do this not as part of a government top-down initiative. We want to do it as part of a partnership. And hopefully that Digital Participation Charter and the action group that supports it will be able to stand on its own 2 feet and will be able to find other sources of finance, both from the private and the public and the third sector, and so that we can have a real movement in Scotland to generate digital participation. Now, finally, I mean, I've sat in many conferences like this. I'll probably sit in many more where I've heard people speaking, I've heard case studies, and sometimes, you know, you have your perspectives challenged and you learn things that you can take back to the office. And what I want to try and do is just leave you with a few thoughts about how everyone in this room can get involved in making Scotland a world-class digital nation. The first one, and there's a banner up there about Scotland's digital dialogue. As I said, in the digital world, governments realize that there is no monopoly on wisdom. And although we will put an awful lot of effort, and we do, into building relationships with some of our more obvious stakeholders, what we want to have in terms of framing the future of the digital strategy is a dialogue with everybody, regardless of where they sit, regardless of which organization they respond, regardless of where they are in Scotland or indeed the world. And we're trying through the digital dialogue, and there are some LinkedIn groups and discussion groups that are really starting to be very, very active and are challenging and are influencing the policy agenda going forward, to get people to talk to us, to make recommendations, and to challenge our perceptions. And I would urge you to look up that and get involved in the process. And secondly, and I mentioned the Digital Participation Charter, I really would urge you, anybody who represents an organization in this room, to think about signing that charter and think about playing your part in making it a success. I mean, anyone in the ICT industry, the ask is pretty simple and hopefully not too difficult. by signing the Charter, you're committing to doing two things. Firstly, and we think that in some companies this can make a real impact in overall levels of digital inclusion in Scotland. You're signing up to ensure that your own staff have at least a basic level of digital literacy by 2015. So probably not too challenging for many of the organizations that you represent. But secondly, and I think this is where the real power of this sort of gathering can come, is by saying that you are happy to get involved in knowledge exchange, sharing skills, acting as a mentor to other companies and other organizations to get them digitally engaged. If we can do that, we can create a world-class digital Scotland. We can create a digitally included society, we can create and stimulate a vibrant digital economy, and from an infrastructure point of view, we can create the demand which will mean that future iterations of infrastructure will be driven by the market and not just by public sector investment. And I think that's a challenge that we all should, in this room, seize upon, because I think it's all in our interest, our economic interest and our social interest. So thank you.